Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, May 8th, 2020, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright, guys, well, I'd like to continue with my series looking into the accounts of the quote unquote giants, or large hominids as I like to call them, state by state. And as far as I know, nobody else on YouTube has ever attempted to do anything like this. So it's a pretty original series that I have here. I'll put it together in a playlist soon. But next up is Washington State. And Washington State doesn't really have a lot of accounts. We go through the accounts on this Greater Ancestors website here, hosted, moderated by Chris Leslie, and it's a pretty good one because it's compiled all of these accounts from all around the world, really, on the large hominids. So, and also other accounts as well about small people as well. So, and dwarves, etc., etc. So. Again, the past is more likened to what we expect from a Tolkien novel, as other people have said. But there's not a lot of accounts from Washington State, but the ones that there are extremely interesting and fascinating. So, and not only the details fascinating some of these things, it's just how the genesis of these accounts, and how these things were sometimes followed up. And here's a perfect example of that. It's just so interesting to follow along with the story here. And I think we have a lot of dates with these accounts, but it certainly seems to be an older one. 1893, from the Morning Call, San Francisco, California, Historic American Newspapers, Library of Congress. So let's read this article here, because again, it's just very interesting. It shows a sort of genesis of how these things were happening back then. An Indian mound, wonderful discovery made in Washington. 3 skeletons exhumed, relics from an ancient tomb to be exhibited at the World's Fair in Chicago. So it's the Columbia exposition in the World's Fair in Chicago, where these things ended up at in 1893, as a matter of fact. So correspondence of the Morning Call. 16 miles southwest of Colville, Stevens County, Washington, stands a conical-shaped mound of earth which has been seen by many prospectors and other wayfarers, but as the minds of most of them have been fixed solely on their own urgent business affairs, they have passed and repassed it for years without taking any interest whatever in the curious pile. I saw it for the first time 10 days ago and at once decided to make an investigation. The mound is situated in a small and perfectly level plain between a series of low, rolling hills. It rises to a height of 35 feet and is turned at the top like the small end of an egg. So it's apparently it's an egg-shaped top. It is 76 feet in circumference at the base and slopes gradually inward to the apex. The material of which it is constructed is a mixture of hard iron, clay, adobe, and shale. So here you see sort of analysis of what the mounds may have been composed of, special mixtures of earth materials. And This is why, and I've said it before, and you're not going to hear it anywhere else on anybody else's channel or in any history book, but the people at Cahokia, when the western part of the mound was found to be sagging by archaeologists and anthropologists who were doing research in the area there. They had seen, they determined that it was repaired. It was damaged during some sort of cataclysm and then repaired, but then repair was no good. It sagged. And that is because the people who the mainstream says were living at Cahokia at the time, that at least that they determined, in their minds, okay, that they were the only people who could have built the mound. Apparently those people didn't know how the mound was built and what materials were used to build the mound. Otherwise, they would have been able to make a sufficient repair to it. So the people that they think were at Cahokia really were the people who stumbled upon it later on, like so many other sites around the world, in a world where the ancient past was filled with all kinds of catastrophes and cataclysms, and peoples were separated, timelines were separated, and we don't really know what the chronology really is. So the material, which is a mixture of hard iron, clay, adobe, and shale, it seems very strange to me that although its existence has been known to scores of people for many years, no one has hitherto taken the trouble to investigate its interior. It may be that those who have seen it and passed it by have thought it to be a mere freak of nature, turning into shape by the whirling eddy of some bygone flood. But to me, it showed plainly the handiwork of man, and for this reason I determined to violate the sanctity of its silence. I obtained picks, shovels, a crowbar, drills, and some cartridges from Douglas Blount, a prospector who lives in a rough log cabin about 4 miles from the mound. I also secured the services of 2 half-civilized Siwash bucks, and on the following day we set to work on the east side of the pile. At first, the Indians were slightly affected by a superstitious fear, but as the work progressed, they began to share my enthusiasm and eagerness to reach the interior. After we had worked our way about 4 feet into the mound, making an excavation 4 feet by 6 feet high, we found the wall so hard that it was necessary to put in a blast. The charge was set, and 3 of us retreated to a safe distance to watch the result. Bang went the blast, and fully 1/3 of the mound's wall was blown to fragments. So they reached this part of the mound was so hard that they needed to put in dynamite charges to get to the interior. It just goes to show you that the mound constructions weren't just simply earthworks, just piles of dirt piled on top of each other and made into mounds. There's some methods of construction to these mounds that go beyond that, you see. The work of clearing away the debris consumed several hours, but when it was done, I was well repaid for my labor and expense. The aperture disclosed a circular-shaped chamber, the walls of which were smooth as glass and decorated with curious figures in vermilion red. 3 human skeletons, partially covered with moldy skins of buffalo and bear, leaned in a squatting position against the wall on the west side, their faces turned to the east. The flesh that had once covered these grayish-white bones had been long since turned to dust, and the skins were so badly decayed that the slightest touch caused them to break into fragments. The skeleton in the center was by far the largest of the 3, and by close examination I came to the conclusion that the trio must represent some great Indian chief and his 2 squaws. Maybe, where is this stuff today, and the skeletons, everything, never to be seen again. In front, anything that went to the Columbia exhibition there, just, never made it back to anywhere, apparently. In front of the central figure stood a large earthen urn, or rather a pot, which was half filled with queer looking ornaments of various colored stones and arrowheads of bronze. Very interesting, bronze arrowheads. There were not copper, bronze. There were also remains of three longbows, a leathern quiver filled with arrows, and an arrow-bladed tomahawk of bronze. So a bronze tomahawk. When my two Indian assistants first beheld the three skeletons, they were stricken with superstitious terror and ran several hundred yards from the mound, wildly waving their hands above their heads as they went, and uttering unintelligible howls of fear and lamentation. I followed and finally influenced them to stop their mad flight, but they would under no condition return to the mound. At last I persuaded them to remain where they were, while I returned to the mound for the relics which I had determined to carry with me at any cost. I secured the earthen pot, the stone ornaments, arrowheads, and arrows, and these are now on their way to Chicago, where they can be seen in the Washington exhibit at the Columbian Exposition. On closer examination of the three skeletons, with a view to their preservation, I found that the bones were so badly decayed they would not stand the process of linking together. They crumbled to dust and ashes at my touch as if they had been calcined, and for that reason I have left them where I found them. I have informed several scientists who have made these things a study of my discovery, and I expect that through their investigation and examination of the mound, the skeletons, and the curious relics, some light will be thrown on the antiquity and history of this place of sepulchre. As for me, I am not a theorist. I can only state the facts as I have seen them. J.A. Frisbee, Spokane, February 1st. Okay, so how interesting was that with the bronze tomahawks and bronze spearheads, and this large person with humanoid with these other two, and being of large size again, and where do they fit into the past? This is Washington State. We're not talking about the Adena cultures and Hopewell and the Mississippian culture. We're not talking about that. Who are we talking about now? Here on the West Coast with bronze weaponry, etc. All right, so Lewis County Giant, 7'10". Chehalis is excited. Reported discovery of an immense cave in Lewis County, Tacoma, Washington, March 7th. The town of Chehalis is excited over the reported discovery of an immense cave in the eastern part of Lewis County. Exploration was made of a distance of 5 miles, revealing strange and wonderful sights. After entering a lower passage beneath the main cavern, the explorer came to a subterranean lake. Upon the pebbled beach were found boats of ancient and strange make, some petrified, other partially so. In one of the small rooms of the first cavern were found the remains of 2 human beings, both giants in size. The man 7 feet 10 inches long, the woman a few inches less. Both bodies were reported either frozen stiff or mummified. Hammers and drills of brass were found. Hammers and drills of brass. The elaborate work must have taken years and was apparently done ages ago by a prehistoric race. So, how interesting is that? Doesn't give a date for this, but 1901. Spokane Daily Chronicle, 1901. All right, so beginning of the 20th century, and there's many accounts from the first part of the 20th century, even up into the 40s and 50s, but still all the deniers will say, nah, no such thing. Vashon Island giant, skeleton of a giant found while digging a post hole on the premises of SS Heath at Burton, Vashon Island. The other day, Charles Crispin found the skeleton of a giant, states a West Side report. It measured 7 feet 6 inches in height, and all the bones are large in proportion to their length, showing the persons to have been a man of great weight. The skull has a transverse diameter of 7.5 inches and is 21 inches in circumference, which is mighty big. The skeleton was but 18 inches below the surface and had evidently lain in the ground for many years. Heath and Crispin proposed to sell the skeleton. All the bones are in a good state of preservation. The settlers are at a loss to account for the skeleton. Secretary Gilstrap of the State Historical Society believes it may be the remains of some early day Hudson Bay trapper. So this guy thinks it's a Hudson Bay trapper. And when was this from here? Oh, they have a second one. Same article, more or less. And this one's no date, I don't think, on it. So, but they look old there. And just another interesting one with rather large skeleton, and they're selling it. And many of these things that we find from these accounts were sold, and then what happened to them after they were sold? They just go around and around till somebody sold them at a garage sale. They threw them in the dustbin. I mean, what happened? All right, giant shoe print in Washington State, large shoe print in rock. So this is a shoe print. This photo was taken in northern Washington State and was reportedly found with another partial imprint. So this right here, I guess, looks like a shoe print of some sort with other weird things. It appears to be the shoe print of a large individual. See man's shoe in lower left of photo for comparison. Approximately 16 inches long from heel to toe. The rock itself is judged by geologists in evolutionary time, quote unquote, as opposed to actual time, to be between 10 and 20 million years old. The point is, according to the evolutionary theory, no one should have been around early enough to leave a shoe imprint in what is now solid rock, and no one should have been around to draw one either. So, call it what you will, of course. There remains the possibility, of course, that someone painstakingly chiseled out 2 convincing shoe prints in recent times and left them on a mountain. So, I doubt it, but even so, they just claim, I'm sure, the professional academics would just say that it's anomalous, just an anomaly, some natural formation, not really a shoe print or whatever. All right, guys. So, not a lot of accounts for Washington State here, but some very interesting ones. It's really fascinating. Just the whole thing with this one, with the underground lake, with the shores with petrified boats of ancient and strange make, some petrified on this pebbled beach in this subterranean lake. And just how fantastic does that sound? Where is this place? Can we see it? I mean, what happened to it? And what happened to everything else? Who knows? Nobody knows. The shadow knows, but Smithsonian, I'm sure, knows what happened to all these things. They're the ones who bought them all up. And that's why people were selling them, because, people like the Smithsonian are buying them up to disappear them forever, to make sure it is, nobody can, find out what the real story is. All right, guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope everybody's okay. And if you enjoyed the video, please do hit the like button. And I will be back with another video on the Giants real soon. Alright, guys. Anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.